Hello, everybody. The Prime Minister's here. Dear parliamentarians, students, colleagues, and guests, I'm Kevin Page. I'm the current Jean-Luc Pepin Research Chair at the University of Ottawa and a future chair of a new institute, the Institute of Fiscal Studies and Democracy at the University of Ottawa. Nous sommes rassemblés aujourd'hui pour un forum de la jeunesse dans le cadre de la campagne iVote-jeVote. iVote-jeVote a été conçu pour encourager l'engagement des jeunes et des groupes marginalisés dans les affaires politiques du pays et les encourager à voter. Harry Chapin, the famous U.S. singer-songwriter from the 1970s, wrote a song called Circle. The song says, life is full of circles, but they are hard to explain. That there are no straight lines and all roads have bends. In March 2014, 2 years ago, we held our first iVote-jeVote event at the university on youth political engagement. Ottawa students were concerned about low youth voter turnout and the lack of engagement by our political leaders on issues that were important for their futures, including environment, innovation, science, diversity, and governance. More than 1,000 students turned out for that first event here in this building. We had a political panel that included leaders from the Liberal Party, the NDP, the Green Party. Mr. Chong represented the governing Conservative Party. The election in 2015 brought about political and policy change. While we do not have official figures from Election Canada on voter youth turnout, I've been told by my sources, they're good sources, there was a record increase in youth participation to go along with a very large increase in overall voter turnout. This is very good news. In the lead-up to the election, the students of iVote-jeVote campaign ran a series of policy discussion events along with researchers and political leaders of all stripes on major long-term issues. That's real engagement. Last week, they did the same on electoral reform, which included an address from the Honourable Mariam Monsef, Minister of Democratic Institutions. The force is strong among the students of the University of Ottawa and across the country. Thanks to Budget 2016, our Parliament is talking about infrastructure for the 21st century, addressing long-standing issues with our Aboriginal peoples. There are commitments to move forward on innovation and science. Canada has re-engaged on climate change. Change is happening. Today, I am honoured to stand before you with what is a very important event at the University of Ottawa and a return visit. The circle is now complete for the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada and Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs and Youth. Yes, youth. It is a pleasure to introduce to you the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister for Youth, Peter Schiefke. Depuis son plus jeune âge, Peter Schiefke est passionné des causes environnementales, sociales et humanitaires. Cette passion l'a motivé à fonder un nombre de projets et organisations, incluant le projet Nous ne oublierons jamais, qui vise à rendre hommage aux veterans. Peter also co-founded the Concordia Volunteer Abroad Program, a non-profit organization that helps victims of civil war in East Africa, which has received numerous awards over the years. An expert in sustainable and community development, Peter co-founded and served as the president of Youth Action Canada, a non-profit organization that promotes youth involvement in fighting climate change. Mesdames et messieurs, je vous présente Mr. Peter Schiefke. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming out today. I know that a lot of you are in exams or you're working on final papers. I've been there, I understand. And so I want to say a special thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time to be here, and also for those of you who are watching online, at home, and campuses all across the country to be a part of this event organized by iVote.
Merci beaucoup à jeVote pour avoir organisé cet événement aujourd'hui. C'est vraiment une belle période pour le Canada et surtout pour vous, les jeunes. Le gouvernement du Canada a fait de vous une priorité. Nous avons un ministre de la Jeunesse et une équipe dévouée dont je suis moi-même une fière participant à titre de secrétaire parlementaire pour le Premier ministre pour la Jeunesse. Notre équipe est prête à faire tout ce qui est nécessaire afin de vous puissiez exploiter pleinement votre potentiel.
I want to say that as both a member of Parliament and also as the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister for Youth, I'm incredibly excited to see the change that is unfolding across the country. One that's going to help foster the innovation and the creativity and all of the talent of each and every one of you in this room and youth all across the country from coast to coast to coast. Your views and the views of your peers across the country are incredibly important to us because they're going to help shape the future of our country. And I can say this with all sincerity, we don't just need you at the table, we want to have you at the table. And so with that, and to officially launch our government's vision for Canadian youth, it is my pleasure and an incredible honor to introduce to you the Prime Minister of Canada and Canada's Minister for Youth, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you to all of you for coming today. Thank you to Alan Rock and Kevin Page for all their hard work supporting iVote. And I want to start with another thank you. You know, all my political career, I've been told that young people don't matter, that young people don't engage, that young people, may take an interest in certain issues, but never tend to actually follow up and vote. And over the past few years, I've been going around explaining to people that young people care deeply about their communities, about the world, about their future. Young people have things to say. They're more informed, more involved than ever before. And if they're not getting involved in politics, well, that's not young people's fault. That's politics' fault. And I kept explaining to people that if we changed the way politics actually reached out to young people and encouraged politicians to listen and young people to come and be heard and have an impact through politics, who knew what could happen? Well, in the last election, you demonstrated what would happen. Young people came out and voted in record levels and actually helped choose the government. And for that, two things. I am, of course, profoundly grateful. But secondly, no political party in any future election is now going to be able to shrug and say, oh no, we don't have to worry about what young people think because they never vote anyway. You have demonstrated that you are an essential and fundamental part of our electoral system and need to be reached out to, valued and involved just like any other community, and to my mind, more than most. Because young people have an innate desire and capacity to think about what the world could be like and to challenge the status quo. And any system needs strong elements asking, well, are you sure about this? Or why has it always been done this way? And can we do it differently next time? That push that you provided within the Liberal Party as I was rebuilding it, and you certainly provided within our federal elections as it was going on, brought us to where we are today. And for that, I and all of Canada of all ages are deeply grateful. Merci beaucoup. So, when I was asked to be a part of this event, I thought a lot about what I wanted to say. I thought we could talk about the importance of getting young people engaged in the political process, but I know you guys know how important that is because you're here in this room. I wanted to talk about how grassroots movements can be amazing catalysts for change, but again, I'm a fairly open book with that particular approach. So what I decided to talk with you about today is, first of all, to present myself to you not as the Prime Minister, but as the Minister for Youth, which is the portfolio I assigned myself, by the way. I get to do that when I'm Prime Minister. I wanted to take that extra responsibility because the challenges that young people face have always been important to me, whether as a teacher or a volunteer or as a politician. Youth issues are Canada's issues. There's no separating the two. So I know that when people are cynical about politics, both young and old, they tend to have the same complaint. They say politicians are all talk and no action. Well, this is a lecture and Q&A format, which means I'm going to have to do some talking. But what I want to focus on today are the actions that our government is taking to invest in Canada's youth. Specifically, I want to touch on empowering young Canadians, on what we're doing to help young Canadians get good jobs and work experience, and on the importance of equality and inclusion. And at the end of my speech, I'm going to open it up and take as many questions as I can, which means I'm going to go through the discipline of shortening my answers. And anyone who's seen me speak before knows that I can go on a little bit. I know, shocking for a politician. So we'll try and compress my answers to, I'm sure, the many questions that you all have to put forward. Alors, je n'ai pas de doute que les jeunes Canadiens s'intéressent à la politique. On le voit ici aujourd'hui et on l'a vu le jour du scrutin. Statistique Canada a constaté que lors de la dernière élection, la proportion des jeunes de 18 à 24 ans qui sont allés voter était de 12% supérieure à la précédente élection. Ce pourcentage pourrait être encore plus élevé la prochaine fois si nous nous assurons que les jeunes se sentent impliqués et engagés. À la prochaine élection, en 2019, 1,5 million de personnes pourront voter pour la toute première fois. Nous devons nous assurer que ces électeurs de demain, qui sont présentement au secondaire, puissent prendre part au processus des décisions. Ces décisions auront un impact important sur leur vie et ils doivent avoir leur mot à dire. So what does that really mean? What does it look like in practice? Well, as Minister of Youth, it will be my job to make sure that Cabinet considers items from the perspective of young Canadians. And I'll support my Cabinet colleagues in applying that same youth lens to the work that their ministry undertakes. To keep me up to speed on the issues that matter most to young Canadians, I'll be launching a Youth Advisory Council made up of Canadians aged 16 to 24. And to make sure that young Canadians think about meaningful careers in government, to modernize the public service. You have so much to give, and your voices and perspectives are needed like never before. Your goals, your hopes, and your dreams for a better life will inform every decision this government makes. That is my promise to you. When it comes to getting good jobs and work experience, there's a familiar refrain amongst young people. I hear it in every community I visit. Young people tell me that they can't get a job because they don't have any work experience, and they can't get any work experience because they don't have a job. It's a vicious circle. And our new government is taking steps to help break it. We're establishing an expert panel on youth employment to assess the barriers that vulnerable youth face in finding and keeping jobs. We need to better understand your challenges. At the same time, we know you need help now, not months or years from now. That's why last month's budget included real measures to address youth unemployment and underemployment, and real help for young people seeking their first jobs. That work starts in the classroom. To start, we're investing in actual classrooms. Over the next 3 years, we'll be investing $2 billion in labs and buildings on college and university campuses. But perhaps more important, we're investing in students so that when young people go off to school, they can afford to stay in school. In Canada, every young person should have the opportunity to go to university or college. It shouldn't matter where you were born or how much money your parents make. We took real steps towards making that a reality with Budget 2016. Nous verserons jusqu'à $1,000 de plus par année aux étudiants postsecondaires qui viennent de familles à faible et à moyen revenu dans le cadre du programme canadien des bourses aux étudiants. Cela veut dire que 360 000 étudiants auront plus d'argent dans leur poche à chaque année. Notre budget prévoit aussi plus d'aide pour les nouveaux diplômés. Dès la fin de cet exercice financier, les étudiants qui obtiennent leur diplôme collégial ou universitaire n'auront pas à rembourser leurs prêts étudiants avant de gagner au moins 25 000 $ par année. Cette mesure aidera les jeunes à débuter leur carrière et leur permettra de souffler un peu jusqu'à ce qu'ils retombent sur leurs pieds. Nous aiderons aussi les jeunes en faisant de nouveaux investissements importants dans la formation professionnelle. Avant, le gouvernement du Canada dépensait 330 millions de $ par année dans l'emploi des jeunes. Cette année, nous investirons presque le double. C'est seulement quelques-unes des mesures prévues pour aider les étudiants et les nouveaux travailleurs à trouver un travail à la hauteur de leurs attentes et bien rémunéré. Investing in young Canadians is a smart bet. I'm confident of that because I've seen what you're all capable of. I'm reminded almost daily of your unparalleled empathy for others and your genuine commitment to equality and inclusion. I have often said that Canada is a country that is strong not in spite of our differences, but because of them. This is true of Canada's young people, and it is especially true of Indigenous youth. We have a lot of work to do to make sure that all young people in Canada enjoy equal treatment and equal opportunity. This work won't be easy. Things that matter seldom are. But I'm confident that if Canada and its Indigenous partners work together on a nation-to-nation basis, we can and we will ensure that Indigenous youth have a strong voice in shaping their futures. For our part, the government will invest $2.6 billion over the next 5 years in primary and secondary education on reserves to help First Nations students learn and succeed. Every child deserves a quality education. Equality and inclusion matter, no matter your background, no matter where you live. These are the principles that will guide the decisions we make as a government. Quand je vois les étudiants ici aujourd'hui, je suis fier, confiant et franchement, ça me rassure. Notre pays n'a jamais connu une génération plus éduquée, plus branchée, plus diversifiée que la vôtre. Il y a 20 ans, quand j'étais étudiant, on n'aurait pas pu imaginer l'impact que vous avez maintenant dans vos communautés. Je faisais partie de la première cohorte à McGill où les étudiants ont reçu une adresse courriel. Je peux vous dire qu'elle contenait plus de chiffres que mon manuel de mathématiques. Mais pour vous, la technologie est automatique. L'innovation est seconde nature. La diversité est une force et le travail d'équipe fait partie des attentes. Don't let anyone ever tell you you are leaders of tomorrow. You are leaders today. What you do, what you say, and the choices you make have the power to change your communities, to change the future, to change the world. Young people have long demanded more from their elected representatives, and I'm here to tell you that our government expects more of each of you. We need your help. Tell us your concerns. Keep us focused, and expect more than talk. Demand action. My friends, this is a collaboration. Together we'll create a future that we can be proud of for generations to come. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions. So, who's got the first question? Here we go. Go ahead, sir. Got a mic right there.
Take this.
Okay. See, your first mistake, you actually handed him the mic. But yes.
Oh, do I?
You pulled out 3 sheets of paper, so I was like, no, I'm kidding.
Sir, he's one of our students. He better be good.
Yeah, I know, and he's a football player, so be nice to him.
You should come to one of the games. My name's Rashid Simbilla, and it's an honor. My question is, in today's society, millennials are using social media at an alarming rate, as you probably know. Seeing as this is about youth engagement and especially child engagement, how would you combat the rampant cynicism and political apathy that is apparent on social media today to foster greater youth engagement in politics? And can I get a selfie after?
Well, first of all, I think social media is a good thing. I think social media is a tool amongst any other things. And as I said to people asking me about social media and politics, social media doesn't replace anything else you have to do in politics. It doesn't replace a single handshake or a single conversation with voters. It's in addition to everything else you have to do. And one of the key things to think about in terms of social media, and we need to all work hard at this, is not imagine that social media is separate from everything else. And indeed, the way to make proper use of it and the way to understand its importance in your world is to always link it to IRL actions. I mean, what actually happens, in real life for anyone over 40. The question I always had about social media is, okay, it's great that we have all these friends and followers, but how are we actually engaging them in real conversations? How are we getting them to come out and vote? How are we getting them to volunteer? How are we making sure that their voices actually resonate concretely? So it's great that we have all these new tools for connecting and drawing people together, but if they don't result in actual impacts in our communities, in our world, then it's just an echo chamber that doesn't do much except except spin in circles and is completely disconnected from the real engagement and activity and communications that I think need to be at the heart of anyone and the communities we live in. Thank you. Next question. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. Sorry, I was teasing about that. You can give her the mic. It's okay. Or not. Stand up and introduce yourself. Sorry.
Mon nom, c'est Schiefke.
Bonjour.
Premièrement, merci d'être ici aujourd'hui. J'aimerais ça parler justement des Premières Nations. J'ai vu il y a une heure que vous avez publié sur Facebook un communiqué concernant ce que vous alliez faire pour Ottawa-Piscat. Puis dans le fond, ma question, c'est comment vous l'avez fait pour les réfugiés en Syrie? Vous avez fait une campagne publicitaire sur les médias sociaux, sur Internet. Parce que ce que vous avez fait, c'est que vous nous avez dit comment nous, les Canadiens, on pouvait aider. Puis c'est beau qu'est-ce que le gouvernement va faire, puis c'est hyper important, mais j'aimerais savoir qu'est-ce que nous, Canadiens, on peut faire, puis est-ce qu'on peut avoir une campagne nationale pour nous dire comment nous, les Canadiens, on peut aider nos Premières Nations?
Ah, c'est une très, très bonne idée et une très bonne suggestion. La réalité, c'est qu'il faut le reconnaître, les relations avec les Premières Nations, avec les peuples autochtones de ce pays sont brisées et le sont depuis longtemps. On a échoué en tant que pays d'être à la hauteur des principes, des droits, des traités qui ont été signés et qui sont là depuis des centaines d'années. Ça nous prend un partenariat, une collaboration, un niveau de respect qui n'est tout simplement pas là. Et donc, c'est pour ça que dans notre budget, on s'est engagé à investir plus que 8,4 milliards de dollars sur 5 ans dans les communautés autochtones. Mais il faut faire très attention dans la façon qu'on réfléchit à comment on peut aider. Parce que le Canada voulant aider les peuples autochtones, c'est ça qui a mené aux écoles résidentielles. Le Canada voulant aider les peuples autochtones a amené au Indian Act, par exemple. Il ne faut pas penser, OK, qu'est-ce que nous, parce qu'on est tellement chanceux, on peut faire pour aider les autres. Il faut penser à comment on peut être de meilleurs partenaires avec tous ceux qui habitent sur ce territoire qui est le Canada. Comment est-ce qu'on peut s'assurer qu'on est en train de donner les outils et les pistes vers la réussite pour les jeunes qui vivent dans des communautés autochtones qui n'ont pas ces pistes vers la réussite. C'est une distinction peut-être subtile, mais elle est essentielle. Ce n'est pas à nous de réparer directement tous les problèmes et d'offrir des solutions. C'est à nous d'aider les communautés autochtones à développer les solutions nécessaires, à créer toutes les opportunités nécessaires. Et c'est sûr qu'au début, il faut en faire un petit peu plus parce que, comme on a vu à Ottawa-Piscat, il y a des problèmes énormes. Mais ce n'est pas juste à Ottawa-Piscat. C'est la Loche. C'est des communautés à travers le pays qui vivent des moments extrêmement difficiles. Alors, ça commence avec un respect, une collaboration, un partenariat. Et je peux souligner que, comme pour le cas des réfugiés syriens, j'ai été tellement touché par le désir et l'appel des non-autochtones à travers le pays qu'il est temps qu'on commence à rebâtir cette relation. Les gens comprennent que c'est un enjeu de base pour notre pays et c'est exactement ce sur quoi nous allons travailler, mais je prends la suggestion de façon très, très positive. Il faut créer des opportunités pour tous les Canadiens d'en faire plus pour améliorer l'état de cette relation. Merci beaucoup. Next question. You over in the corner, on the side. Okay, why don't you guys split up and go one on one side? There we go. No, you're not going to make it to her. There we go.
Hi, my name is Jasmine. I'm a law student here at the university. And I'm wondering, recent studies have demonstrated that about 80% of Canadians don't have access to justice here in Canada. So I'm wondering, what are you going to do to make sure that access to justice isn't a privilege, but something that really everybody can have access to here?
That's a great question. It's actually part of what I put in the mandate letter to our Justice Minister, to make sure that everyone has access to justice, to legal supports. It's why we're restoring the Court Challenges program that was eliminated by the Conservatives a number of years ago. It helps particularly underrepresented or disadvantaged groups access the justice system as a way of pushing forward their concerns. We have a lot more to do. We're working with the provinces to make sure that robust systems of legal aid are available right across the country. But it's exactly something that I asked our Minister of Justice, Jody Wilson-Raybould, to take the lead on, and she'll have solutions coming forward in the coming weeks and months. Merci. Someone over here. Yes, you.
Jean-Michel Boudreau, je voulais savoir, à titre de jeune employé de l'État, comment vous alliez faire pour revaloriser la fonction publique auprès de la jeune génération, puis lui donner tous les outils nécessaires pour faire en sorte que les Canadiens soient bien servis par une fonction publique forte et conséquente.
Oui. Et ça nous prend une fonction publique forte, indépendante, non partisane, professionnelle. Ça fait trop longtemps qu'on avait un gouvernement qui disait à la fonction publique les solutions qu'il voulait qu'on implante. Pour moi, le gouvernement se doit de dire à la fonction publique, voici l'objectif qu'on veut atteindre. Est-ce que vous pouvez trouver les programmes, les solutions pour pouvoir atteindre ces objectifs de la bonne façon? C'est une question d'impliquer l'intelligence, l'éducation, le bien vouloir de servir de dizaines de milliers de personnes à travers Ottawa, à travers le pays, pour justement mieux servir les Canadiens. Ça fait trop longtemps qu'on manque de respect pour ceux qui livrent les programmes et les solutions qui nous touchent énormément à tous les jours. Et c'est pour ça que le respect d'une fonction publique indépendante, robuste, professionnelle est au cœur des lettres de mandat que j'ai offertes à mes ministres et au cœur de la façon que nous fonctionnons. Merci. In the back.
So my question is about feminism, and I know you've spoken quite openly about being a feminist, and it's been very heartening to hear and to see the representation you've augmented in the cabinet, and definitely marks a shift in tone from our last administration. So my question to you is this. My question to you is this. How do you see your feminism shaping the policy that your government is going to be putting forward? I know that Stephen Lewis made a speech a couple weeks ago in Edmonton where he pointed out that in this past administration we've seen women being denied a child care program across the country, as well as arms being sold to what he pointed out was a violent and misogynistic regime. So I was wondering if you could speak to that and how you see your feminism shaping the policies of the Government of Canada.
Well, I have tremendous respect for Stephen Lewis, and he's free to leap whatever direction he likes. But the fact of the matter is that we have worked very, very hard to demonstrate that feminism is something that we all have to be concerned with, not just men, not just women. Men need to be involved as well, and every decision that a government takes should involve a gender lens. We should be making sure that the decisions we're taking are going to have positive impacts for everyone, for diversity, for minorities, but specifically for women. Because for all the great talk that we've been able to put forward as Canada getting it and being feminists on the world stage, as I said at the UN just a few weeks ago, Canada is one of the worst countries in our categories for pay equity. We still have an awfully long way to go to make sure that women are paid the same as men for similar work. And that's something that we have to be very, very conscious of. We have to understand that it touches a broad range of issues, from labor relations to international relations, how we stand, how we defend the principles that are near and dear to us, how we raise our families and our communities is extremely important. For me, not just talking to my daughter and telling her that she can be anything she likes, but reminding my sons that they have an important role to play in respecting the girls in their class and respecting their sister, which is sometimes a challenge, but that's just because they're kids, not because they're not open to it. The challenges we have are a larger societal challenge. And on the issues you brought up directly, we just had a discussion around international engagement around the cabinet table and how we need to make sure that, the Minister of Status of Women spoke up and said, look, on any international engagement we have to think about the impact that it has on women. And on supporting families. I'm incredibly proud of the Canada Child Benefit that we're going to start on July 1st, which will be a larger tax-free check that will make a huge difference in the lives of low-income and middle-class families right across the country as we give people the support they need to raise their kids. On top of that, we have committed, as we did during the election campaign, to work with the provinces towards achieving child care negotiations. But we know, unlike some other parties, you can't simply impose it from the federal level. We have to create it through partnerships with the provinces, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Thank you for your question. You, yes.
Thank you very much. You don't have to put it up high, I'm short, so it works out. I'm going to have to read as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity, first of all. Part of a global youth-led organization called ISIC that provides students with international leadership opportunities through professional and volunteering internships. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Canadian youth participating in opportunities abroad and the value that they can bring back to Canada for both their future growth and innovation. Thank you very much.
Great question. One of the ways I got engaged in politics was through my activism with youth service organizations. I was the chair of the board of directors of Canada's National Youth Service Program at the time, Katimavik, and kept running up against politicians who would sometimes help out young people, but just couldn't see the value in empowering a generation of young people through service opportunities. And whether you talk about programs like Katimavik or Canada World Youth, overseas programs or local programs, there is a need to build opportunities for young people who want to engage with their communities, across their province, across the country, and indeed around the world. For multiple reasons. One, because their involvement can have positive, immediate, beneficial impacts on wherever it is they're weighing in. Second, it teaches young people that you can have an impact now. You don't have to wait until you've made it through a career, you've succeeded to get to the top of your game, suddenly turn around and say, oh, okay, I have something to offer the world now, now that I'm not a youth anymore. No, young people can, and you all know this, you can have a powerful impact right now. And third, it's also the kind of pattern setting and engagement that you learn and that you will continue with for the rest of your life. If young people learn the value of volunteering, of getting involved, of helping out, of serving, of creating opportunities, of being active, engaged, involved citizens when they're young, the kinds of citizens they'll be for the rest of their lives tend to be more active, more engaged, more empowered, and quite frankly, the kind of Canadians that we know we need a lot more of. Thank you very much. You.
Ça sera notre dernière question, so this will be our last question.
No, not a chance. We still have 20 more minutes. Well, is my watch stopped? Does someone have a watch? It's past? Yeah. Okay, we have 10 more minutes. There we go. My watch is stopped.
Thank you very much for the opportunity today for this panel. It's wonderful. My question today is about democratic reform. Mm-hmm. So last week we had a panel exactly on that, and it's an issue that it has to do with youth. It has to do with Canadians of all ages. But my question is specifically, why won't the government necessarily commit to a referendum to give the chance to all Canadians to decide whether they want to change their democratic system or not? Noting specifically the 3 referendums in the last 15 years that have actually voted for first past the post rather than change. Thank you.
We put forward a very clear platform that said this will be the last election held under the first-past-the-post system. It was a commitment we made. It was at the center of what we were talking about, how we needed to reform government, reform parliament, reform the way things work. And Canadians responded positively and massively to us and to the other parties saying that they were going to change our electoral system. So I think we can see that there's a fairly clear desire out there to improve our electoral system. And I'm very aware that the current electoral system worked out pretty good for me this time. That's certainly something that would be tempting to sort of say, oh, you know what, it's too complicated. And if I wanted to do that, then there'd be all sorts of push and motivation for me not to follow up on that. Except I believe fundamentally that we can do better. We can have an electoral system that does a better job of reflecting the concerns, the voices of Canadians from coast to coast to coast, and give us a better level of governance. Quite frankly, political parties shouldn't be able to appeal to narrow constituencies and suddenly wield enough power to run the entire country. And a lot of people I've talked to have said, oh, yes, we really, really wanted electoral reform because we had to get rid of Stephen Harper, but now we have a government that we sort of like, so electoral reform just doesn't seem as much of a priority anymore. Well, it's a priority to me. It's a priority to a lot of Canadians who say, you know what, we need to make sure that going forward we have the best possible electoral system. One that values Canadian voices, one that creates good governments, one that makes sure that people can and feel involved in the political process, that they don't have to make impossible choices between options they don't like, that we are able to create the kind of governance that we need in this country. And many of the people, and I'm not accusing you directly, sir, who propose the absolutely we need a referendum, well, they know that the fact is that referendums are a pretty good way of not getting any electoral reform. So we are open to all sorts of different options, and that's why we're engaging in consultations. We're involving Canadians. We're talking about the values that underpin how we choose our governments, how we choose the kind of future that we want and need for ourselves and for our fellow citizens. So I'm looking forward to robust debates on this type versus that type. I'm looking forward to digging into the values underpinning the different choices and the different positionings. I mean, there's a few clear questions we can ask. Is it better to create diversity of voices by making as many different political parties as possible so that in the House of Commons there are all sorts of different perspectives reflected? That's one way of having diversity in the House of Commons. Another way of doing it is to make sure that parties that reach out themselves to fold in a broad diversity of voices and perspectives within their party get rewarded as well. So there's all sorts of different approaches to achieve the same things we all want, which is that citizens' input can be valued, that MPs do a good job of representing the people who elected them and the people who didn't elect them, but they have a responsibility to speak for nonetheless. And in general, and this is my own preference, but I made it very clear in the last election, rewarding people who reach out to broad communities and look to actually find common ground with different people of different ideologies and different perspectives, rather than highlighting differences and distinctions between them. But this is the kind of conversation we should be having about the kind of voting future we want. It shouldn't be, oh, this model is best because it'll help this party, or that model is best because it'll help that party. Who knows what a changed model will actually have in terms of help or non-help? I mean, if your vote, you could guarantee that a vote for the Green Party wasn't going to help the party you didn't want to stay in power, how many more people would vote Green?
would have voted green in the last election. If you knew it wasn't going to help blue, would you have voted green in the last election? Probably a whole bunch more people. So these are the kinds of questions we need to struggle with and think about in a responsible, mature way. And that's where the challenge is, because for so many different ideologies and political parties, they've hung their hat on a particular model which is going to be the right one or the wrong one, or this will be the end of our party, or this will be the permanent majorities for this party. Let's get away from that and realize that Canadians are pretty smart. And when they want a better government, they'll vote for a better government. When they want to change the government, they'll make whatever system they have in front of them work. And a good political party that has the right kind of platform and program for Canadians should be able to make any system work. So what system actually lines up our chances that we're going to have the best possible governance in the future? That's the conversation we need to have around electoral reform. And that's what I'm excited about having tasked our Minister of Democratic Reform, Mariam Monsef, to lead on last week when she presented here at iVote. Thank you very much. And maybe one or two more questions. Here we go. You, yes.
Hi, my name is Felicity Redan. I don't have a super specific question, but I was just hoping that you could expand on the assisted dying, not legislation, but topic that has been tabled, specifically the sort of sub-note that there should be an increase in research and focus on mental health and sort of premeditated decisions.
Advanced directives, yeah. We put forward a piece of legislation just last week that is going to be a significant and massive shift in Canada. As of June 6th, physician-assisted dying or medical assistance in dying will be legal in Canada. This is a big change. There are jurisdictions around the world that have done this, but for us to do this way marks a big shift for our society, for our communities, and it's going to take some getting used to, some understanding of all the implications. And there are a lot of people who've said, okay, we need to, there's all these issues we need to push forward on. And yes, there's issues around mature minors. Should it be accessible for people under 18? There's issues of people suffering from only mental health issues. Should they have access to it? There's the third issue of advanced directives. Can I right now say that if ever I get Alzheimer's and I'm no longer aware of my family members, that yes, I want to be, I want help in dying. These are very, very weighty questions that need to be properly reflected on, which will take time, will take engagement, will take real reflection. And quite frankly, with the timeline we're in right now, where the Supreme Court has given us until June 6th to come forward with a framework that will apply right across the country, there is the sense that this is a big step. We need to take care in the first step we're doing. But I look forward to watching the caliber of discussion, deeply personal reflections that I know are going to be coming forward in the coming months and years as we grapple with this important topic and look at how to make sure that we are both defending people's rights to make their own decisions about their lives, while at the same time we protect the most vulnerable in society. And that's why, even though there's some people who think we didn't jump far enough on this one forward, this is in itself a very big and important and consequential step for our society. And making sure that first step is solid, is thoughtful, is, quite frankly, what we heard in our consultations with Canadians that people are concerned with. So this is the first step. It's a big one. Some people thought it should have been bigger. I respect that, and in the coming months and years, I'm sure there will be many more conversations about this. I hope we don't have to wait, on the Supreme Court to make these decisions. I hope we as Canadians and as parliamentarians are able to have these difficult but reasonable discussions on making sure that we're doing right by everyone's rights while we protect the most vulnerable. But I think we can be very, very comforted with the incredible, thoughtful, and responsible approach that the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Health put forward last week. And I'm extremely hopeful that people in parliamentary debate and in the Senate will reflect on how momentous this step is and take it one step at a time as we move forward in a responsible manner. Because this is one of those things you can't undo once you've moved forward. So let's go forward responsibly, but let's make sure we keep moving forward in the right way. Thank you very much. And okay, one last question. There you go. I've been standing with my back to her the entire time, so you get the...
I definitely thought I was going to miss out on that.
Sorry.
It's okay. My name is Gabrielle Fayant. I'm originally from Fishing Lake Métis Settlement in Alberta, and I've been working here in Ottawa for quite a long time with our Indigenous community here. And so I'm really torn to sit here and see all this excitement, knowing that there's so many people that are suffering right now from a very long legacy of colonial violence. So my question to you is, there's been a lot of us young people leading our communities, and we've been having to do that because we haven't gotten support anywhere else. So we've had to take these initiatives on ourselves. So how will you make sure that the government doesn't create silos? And how will you make sure that young people like myself and young people leading our communities are supported so that we can help our brothers and sisters and our Two-Spirit and our queer folk? How will you make sure that that happens?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Gabriella. And of course, the easy answer is make sure we're empowering you to speak as loudly and clearly and as often as you have right here. Because when I meet young people from Indigenous communities like you, I am constantly encouraged and inspired by our capacity to work together to solve these challenges. But I know not to minimize the scale of these challenges. And I was just talking with our Minister of Indigenous Affairs, Carolyn Bennett, who just got back from a trip to Attawapiskat with Charlie Angus, the NDP MP, and they had an amazing time. And one of the things that was really, really interesting for her was the conversations she had with the young people who obviously were extremely affected by the 11 attempted suicides on top of all the other actual suicides and the general challenges. And when Carolyn and Charlie sort of leaned in with them and said, okay, so what kinds of things are you asking for? What can we do to help and to support? The list of things they wanted weren't necessarily, we need a fancy big new youth center, which is, of course, something that is needed. But it was much more, can we get a better grasp on our identity, on our culture, on our language? Can you help us with that? Can you help us learn how to once again fish and hunt and live off the land so we're in touch with who we are and who we've been for millennia? Can you help us get sort of CPR courses and get better resilience and better impact in terms of our education and how we care for each other? Can we get the tools to be ourselves empowered to create our communities, to contribute to our communities, to build our own future? And the answer, of course, is yes. Yes. And understanding that in some cases, there is a disconnect between the leadership of a community and the young people in a community, and being sensitive and cautious around how we work through that is really important. but making sure that we are understanding that listening to everyone in a community, the young people and the elders, along with the chief and the band council, making sure that everyone's voices resonate as we work to build a solution together is going to be absolutely essential. But when we think about movements like Idle No More, that was started from young activists and women who were not part of the power structures in their community, who said, we need to step forward and activate and engage. And that challenge is one that has been taken up right across the country, not just by Indigenous people, but by non-Indigenous folks right across the country. And that is where I think we are in such a wonderful starting place. We have a long road to walk together, and it's not just about money, and it's not just about nice words and partnership. It's about a lot of hard work that we have to do together. But there is a broad and anchored consensus that we have to do this, and we have to do this together, and that's exactly the path that I look forward to walking with you and with all of you. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. Thank you so much for being here today. And I look forward to our next conversations.
Alors, Monsieur le Premier ministre, quel grand honneur de vous recevoir ici sur le campus de l'Université d'Ottawa. Et je voudrais remercier certains, comme Kevin Page, titulaire de la chaire Jean-Luc Pépin, qui a contribué aujourd'hui, avec Sahir Khan, Hélène Gaspard, qui travaille avec, mais plus particulièrement les étudiants, les étudiantes de iVote-jeVote, qui ont travaillé sans relâche depuis vendredi passé pour préparer l'événement d'aujourd'hui. Alors, un grand merci. Prime Minister, if there are any people who doubt the engagement and interest of young Canadians in politics or the political process, I say that they need only come here to the University of Ottawa and see the energy, see the turnout, see the interest, and see the people who are so fascinated, so involved, who wanted to hear you today, who wanted to put their questions to you today. I think we have before us, Prime Minister, the most cogent and compelling evidence of the engagement of young Canadians. Et je dois vous dire, vous êtes vous-même une inspiration, une source d'énergie pour eux. Alors, je vous remercie sincèrement. It's a great honor to have you on our campus, and we hope you'll come back again soon. Merci.